Unit 5, Republic of Texas, Chapter 13, Lesson 2, Lamar is President. What goals and plans did President Lamar have for Texas? Terms to know: expand, to make larger. Frontier, undeveloped land that lies beyond the border of settled territory. Cabinet, a group of people who serve as advisors to the head of a government. Diplomat, a person who represents a nation's government in its relations with another nation's government. Public land, land owned by the government. Eventual, taking place at a later time. Redback, paper money issued during the Lamar presidency to help resolve the republic's large debt. Facts about Mirabeau Lamar. Mirabeau Lamar was born in 1798 near Louisville, Georgia. He attended schools in Milledgeville, near where his father owned a plantation. He grew up with a love of reading and the arts, and he also learned to fight with a sword and to ride a horse. Even before becoming governor of Texas, Lamar had an interest in politics. He served as secretary to Georgia Governor George Troup, and twice ran for Congress, losing both times. Lamar moved to Texas in 1835 and quickly got involved in the fight for Texas independence. He joined the Army and performed heroically at San Jacinto. After his term as president of Texas, Lamar pursued his literary interest. He eventually got involved in politics again, including, and that was the end of that one. Here's another biography of Chief Bowles. Chief Bowles, also known as Duwally, was a leader of the Cherokees in Texas. The son of a Scottish father and Cherokee mother, Bowles was born in North Carolina around 1756. Due to growing pressure from white settlers, he led his people west and settled in East Texas around 1819. Bowles hoped to receive an official grant of the land where his people settled, but the Spanish government never issued one. The Mexican government provided the grant, but the Cherokees lacked the money for the legal process to secure it. In 1836, Sam Houston signed a treaty with Bowles. The agreement gave the Cherokee possession of their lands in exchange for their staying out of the Texans' war with Mexico. The Texas Congress never approved the treaty, however. When Mirabeau Lamar became president, he ordered the Cherokees to leave Texas. Bowles and his people refused to leave immediately. The Texan army then attacked. In the fighting that followed, Chief Bowles was among those killed. Causes and effects of Western conflict. Causes: settlers immigrate to Texas. Cherokee move to Texas but do not hold title to the lands. Comanche raid Texas settlements. Effects: Lamar orders Cherokee to leave to accommodate immigrating settlers. Texas Army raids Cherokee towns and forces Cherokee from Texas. Texas Rangers retaliate against Comanche raids. Comanche withdraw to the high plains, leaving more land to the Anglo settlers. Texas Navy facts. Some of the very first shots exchanged in the Texas Revolution took place on the water. In September 1835, the schooner San Felipe was carrying munitions to Texans at the start of their revolt against Mexico. The San Felipe was challenged by the Mexican ship Correo. Cannon and rifle fire was exchanged, and the Correo was soon captured. Recognizing the need to protect shipping and the Texas coast, the government of Texas voted to purchase 4 ships in November 1835, creating the first Texas Navy. Soon after, the government approved the creation of a Marine Corps to increase the naval power of the developing nation. During the Texas Revolution, the Navy achieved several important victories. In early March of 1836, the Texan ship Liberty captured the merchant vessel Pelicano. Lamar becomes president. What goals and plans did President Lamar have for Texas? In 1838, Mirabeau Lamar ran for president of Texas. As vice president, Lamar had opposed many of Houston's policies. Lamar's campaign focused on the failure of Houston's peace policy with Native Americans. He also criticized Houston's inability to gain recognition for the Republic. Lamar won easily. President Lamar opposed annexation by the United States. To end the threats from Mexico and Native Americans, he expanded the Texas Rangers and rebuilt the Navy. He also gained recognition for the Republic from France, Britain, and the Netherlands. In 1839, the Texas Congress approved a permanent capital at the edge of the hill country. Many Texans opposed this location because it was too close to the frontier, undeveloped land beyond the border of the settled territory. They feared it would be attacked by Mexico and Native Americans. Lamar, however, wanted to expand settlement westward. In the new capital, named Austin, land was set aside for a university, and the University of Texas later rose on the site. Lamar and his cabinet, or a group of government advisors, arrived in Austin in October 1839. By 1840, more than 850 people lived there, including about 150 enslaved people. There were also diplomats from Britain, France, and the United States. Improving education was one of Lamar's goals. He believed that a republic needed educated, informed voters. Congress set aside nearly 18,000 acres of public land in each county for public schools. Schools were eventually built on some of this land. The rest was sold to pay the cost of existing schools. Congress also reserved land for 2 universities, although they would not be built for a while. Churches ran the first colleges in Texas. Baylor University, founded by Baptists in 1845, is the oldest university in Texas. Changes for Native Americans. How were Native Americans affected by the leadership change in Texas government? In his first message to Congress, Lamar made it clear that he wanted to fight Native Americans. He convinced the Texas Congress to reject Houston's 1836 treaty with the Cherokee. Lamar suspected that the Cherokee were allied with Mexico. In May 1839, Texas Rangers killed Mexicans and Native Americans who were raiding in Texas. The Texas Rangers found papers that seemed to link the Cherokee to a Mexican plot to retake Texas. Lamar ordered the Cherokee out of Texas. Chief Bowles agreed to leave after the harvest, but Lamar would not wait. He ordered the army to force the Cherokee out. On July 16, 1839, Texas forces defeated the Cherokee at the Battle of Natchez. Several Texans and nearly 100 Cherokee were killed, including Chief Bowles. The rest of the Cherokee fled. In 1839, Texas Rangers entered Comanche country and fought several battles. In early 1840, the Comanche sought to end the fighting. They asked for a peace treaty. Texas leaders agreed to a treaty if the Comanche returned all their white captives. However, the Comanche produced only one white captive. The Comanche still held others. Texas Rangers tried to hold the Comanche negotiators hostage until the rest of the captives were returned. A struggle broke out in which 7 Texans and 35 Comanche were killed. This became known as the Council House Fight. To avenge the deaths of their negotiators, the Comanche killed most of their captives. Then they swept down the Guadalupe River Valley, killing settlers and livestock. As the Comanche moved back west, a force of about 200 Texan volunteers chased them. The Texans caught up with the Comanche at Plum Creek. About 50 Comanche were killed in the battle there. In October, another Texan force attacked a large Comanche village on the upper Colorado River. More Comanche died in that fight. After these losses, the Comanche left Texas. In 1841, Lamar ordered similar attacks on the Wichita. The next year, the Wichita asked for peace. Native Americans suffered greatly from Lamar's policies, but his acts failed to bring lasting peace. Relations with Mexico. What actions did President Lamar take to change the Republic's relations with Mexico? President Lamar's vision was that Texas would remain an independent nation, and he wanted it to expand. Additionally, he wanted Mexico to recognize Texas as an independent country. Lamar thought that a strong military would force Mexico to recognize the Republic. In 1839, he gave command of the Texas Navy and its 8 new ships to Edwin W. Moore, a U.S. Navy officer. In 1840, Lamar ordered the Texas Navy to aid Mexican rebels in Mexico's Yucatan province. He hoped that Mexico would recognize Texas in return for ending this aid. When the talks with Mexico failed, Moore helped protect the rebels. Relations between Texas and Mexico grew worse in 1841. This was due to Lamar's attempt to annex Santa Fe. Santa Fe was a busy trading center in New Mexico, which belonged to Mexico. Lamar saw control of New Mexico as the first step in the Republic's expansion. Congress rejected Lamar's plan for Santa Fe, but he went ahead anyway. In June 1841, he sent Jose Antonio Navarro with soldiers and merchants to invite Santa Fe to join Texas. As they neared Santa Fe, the Texans were stopped by Mexican troops and forced to surrender. The Texans were marched to prison in Mexico City, and many died along the way. The survivors were freed in April 1842, thanks to the efforts of Britain and the United States. Lamar's policies were costly. His wars against Native Americans cost nearly $2.5 million. Expeditions and rebuilding the Texas Navy were expensive. Lamar also failed in his attempts to borrow money. The government issued paper money called redbacks, but the bills quickly lost value. By the end of Lamar's term, Texas paper money was so worthless that it was illegal to use it to pay taxes. The Republic's public debt had soared to $8 million.